Hey, this is JC and welcome to Small Brick City, where we want to help you build a Lego city regardless of the space you have. I shared how to build a full city block in a single 32 by 32 stud base plate. That video got tremendous positive response, and thank you to everyone who liked the video, commented, and were inspired by that layout. Originally, I was not going to build up the entire city block, as I just wanted to demonstrate how you could achieve a city block within a single base plate, but I received many messages on Instagram, so I decided to build this up so that you can see how it looks like, and I'll also show you how to expand on a city block to create a really intricate and highly detailed Lego city, even though you don't have a lot of space. So what you see in front of you is the completed city block. I used bricks from my spare parts bin, and I didn't detail any of the interiors of the new buildings, mainly because I just wanted to show how this looks like when it's built up, and I've already shown how to detail one of these small 8x8 buildings with this particular building over here. And if you missed it, do check out the previous video in the card above on the link below. Before I go into details of these builds, let me give you a quick all-round look of the city block. So I've added in a small mini car, but really any small car would fit these streets, or you could keep it a pedestrian street. Here you can see how a block of 3 different houses look like when they're together. Each of these builds are 8 studs across and 8 studs deep as well, but you get really nice texture. It looks like townhouses next to each other. In fact, you have this little tiny backyard which is under the stairs in between the buildings, which is quite a nice feature. Over here on this side, I decided to build not a house, but this is a sandwich shop. And I almost think it is an extension of the coffee kiosk, or maybe it's the same company which owns this sandwich shop. So the color scheme is quite similar. Here you can see the back, and that's the back of my coffee kiosk. So this is how I'd lay out this particular city block after building it up. And you can see it's pretty cool. It's a nice size, and imagine if you have 4 of these base plates, you can really create a mini brick city. And if you put in the details, you put in minifigs, create scenes, and just add details to the exterior and interior of the builds, you can really come up with an impressive Lego city given its size. And I can tell you, if you do a good job, a Lego city of this size can be more impressive than huge Lego cities that take up an entire basement or garage. For these particular builds, they're all modular, just like this one over here. If you watched the previous video, you know this is a chocolate bakery and an apartment. For this one, I guess it is some kind of apartment as well. It is modular, as I mentioned, and this roof design is slightly different. What I did was put some cones, modified bricks, and I've got an electrical junction box over there. And I also used these inverted bricks to create a nice overhang. For this particular house, I thought that the ground floor would probably be maybe a convenience store or a newsstand, because it's all glass, so it's kind of a business, but the top floor could be an apartment or an office. I did something different with the roof by giving it this sloped roof, and I also added a fireplace inside. That's why there's a chimney, and I'll just pop off the roof and you can see the fireplace inside right there. Pretty small, but you can see how I've angled the chimney roof to align with this particular chimney at the top, and we've got a solid door here. One thing I like to mention that I did differently from what I suggested in the first video is the width of these stairs. Originally, I said to build the stairs so that 1 stud from each side of the stairs are built into the walls of each building. In this case, 2 buildings share 1 flight of stairs. If you can see it over here. Now, that's what I tried to do. I tried to do what I said, and that was to build this side of the stairs into this building. The problem is, it just became too narrow. It's only 2 studs wide, and it's impossible for a minifig to go up reasonably, realistically. And I also couldn't open the doors at all with that 2 stud space. There just wasn't enough space to open the door and for a minifig to get in. So what I did was to build the stairs so that it's only in 1 building, and the other side is not in a building. So I had to then shift the plots or the footprints of the buildings by 1 stud each, and this now gives me reasonably enough space for a door to open, as you can see, on either side. And let's try to get this door open as well. That opens up reasonably well, and there's enough space for a minifig to go up and down. And that's what I did over here as well. So in this case, this particular steps, let me just remove this so you can have a look at what I'm saying. This set of steps is built into this particular house. The other end is free, which means that my middle house has no steps built into the walls. It's actually freestanding, so to speak. So that's one thing you'd want to do if you're building this and taking my suggestion of building 3 8x8 stud buildings in one row. You would allow 3 studs in between and build one end of the stairs into just one building. And typically what you want to do is to tile each of these stairs as well. I didn't do that over here. I just did it for the ground floor just so that you can see the first tile. The reason why the stairs or the first step extends out to the sidewalk just a bit is out of necessity, because you do need to create a level over here or landing so that the door can open and minifigs can go up. And that's why I have an extension behind. You can see I've actually extended it using plates and put a railing system so that no minifigs would fall over and die. So that's my little tip for the stairs, and it's worked out quite well. So if I were to build more of these city blocks in this mini size, I would definitely continue doing that. Over here for the sandwich shop, I've only one flight of stairs on the outside because I have a coffee kiosk here, so there's no need to share the stairs. So the stairs goes up here. I created this angled railing, as you can see. Now the reason why I couldn't do a railing here is because the door would not be able to open. There's not enough space. So what I did was to put studs and this cheese wedge piece so that the door can clear it. At the same time, at least there's still something that minifigs, won't fall over onto the roof over here. What I did for this particular building was to create an inset window on the outside, the arches. This just gives a bit of dimension. It gives me a ledge for some flowers. I have a little awning over here above the door, both the front and the back. And I borrowed this sandwich sign from the corner deli and I built it into this side of the building. The roof itself is pretty simple. It's just one complete plate, and I tiled it and used these panel railings here. So I think that's a really simple finish, but it gives dimension so that it looks different from the rest of the roofs. And if you're building a city block like this, generally you want to think about different designs just to make things more interesting. Of course, you can build a whole row of identical shop houses or townhouses so that there's some consistency. But if you have little space, what you probably want to do is try to vary your designs and vary your build techniques so that you can pack a lot within a small city block. And if you've got multiple of these city blocks, you get a lot of variety. And that's really the key. Anytime you have a Lego city, you want to create visual variety and texture. That's what makes your city interesting. If you have everything homogeneous and looking all the same, it's probably not going to be as interesting. And that's why I chose to use different colors and techniques just for the windows, so that there's a bit of a difference all around. I'd like to talk a bit about color scheme. Just a quick word, I'll do a separate video on it, but how do you choose colors to match for buildings? As you can see, what I've done is, I can tell you these colors were mainly done because of the parts I had, so it wasn't a huge deliberate choice. But anytime I build, I look at floor by floor. In this case, I kind of see the floors separate because I see this as a business and this could be a separate apartment, so they don't necessarily have to match. So when you build something like that, of course you can build them to match so it's uniform for the ground floor and the first floor, or you can make it different. But as a rule, I would suggest always limiting to 3 colors. That means never use more than 3 colors for a single building. It just gets a bit too much. And I would always use a foundation or basic color. I consider white, dark gray, and light gray foundation colors. Black would also fall in as a foundation color, but the reason why I don't like using black too much is the building becomes really dark and it just doesn't look so pleasing to the eye. And especially for me, because I do this for video as well, when you have too much black, it looks too dark, doesn't show up well on video, and it reflects light as well. And so generally I would say avoid all black buildings unless you have to. There's a very specific reason you want to do it, and it also makes your interior very dark. So I would say avoid using black completely, but you can use them as accents. So I would always have one foundation color, may it be white, light gray or dark gray in my builds, and then I'll try to take a contrasting color. You notice, for example, here I have white, which is the foundation color, and then I have brown, which is a contrasting color, and it fits because almost any color would match one of the foundation colors. I also like to put in a little accent, which is in the form of a plate. There's a light gray plate here. Here you can see this blue plate here. And over here I don't have a plate, but I use this log modified bricks as an accent. So if I were to talk, I do have, you can see the plate here. Well, there's a dark gray plate here. But generally, I don't have a formula, but I do follow a general rule. As I said, foundation colors, and I always go with one base, and that's the lower brick here. Sometimes I may put a plate, sometimes I don't. And then I'll build up the main wall, which is generally one solid color, and I'll always put in some kind of accent, such as these contrasting colored bricks. That just makes it interesting, and whenever I can, I add in windows using different techniques, whether it's using this offset jumper plate technique, and I'll use different windows, whether they are window grills or glass windows, and different arrangements of windows as well. This just makes things interesting, and changes things up and makes things just visually more pleasing. And there's one real reason I use lots of windows as well. You use less bricks because a window takes up a lot of space, and when you use a whole series of windows like that, you then save on a lot of bricks. So that's just a short discussion on colors and how I come up with the different build schemes for each building. So this is basically how you can create a city block. I haven't populated this with minifigs. As you know, I would always create scenes, but I'm really focusing on just the buildings for this particular video. One of the questions I got in my private messages was how to expand the city block from the single base plate to multiple base plates to create a Lego city. A lot does depend on the space you have at home, whether you have just one long shelf or you have a table. If you have just a long shelf or a long table, you might have to put all these base plates in a single row. So you have buildings on either side and a road running through. Then you'd kind of replicate what you have on this base plate, but you can change things around. I do suggest sticking to the 8x8 footprint for most of the buildings because you want to pack as much as possible within the base plates that you have, but you can have one or two buildings which are larger. You could even go with a 3-story building for a larger building. Probably not for one of these smaller buildings. I think it looks a bit odd, but give it a shot. Maybe it would look alright. My general rule for Lego cities is to create variety and density, and I think this holds true especially for a mini brick city. So you want variety and density, and that is achieved by having as many builds as possible within your base plates. Now let me show you an example of an expanded base plate which looks different from this particular city block. Here's an example of an expanded mini brick city using one more base plate. This is a standard 32 by 32 stud base plate. I've marked out the roads using these curves, and now this forms a T-junction from the first base plate. And these squares represented by the black plates, those are the 6 buildings or the footprints of the 6 buildings. And to save space, I have designed it such that only 2 sets of stairs serve 6 buildings. That's why I have these long plates here which form the landings. And the great thing about this is you save lots of space, but you maintain the realism of having access to the upper floors of these 6 buildings. So just imagine that these 6 buildings are at least 2 floors high, and a minifig will climb up these stairs, they will come here, and they can access any of these doors on the sides of the buildings. And that's how you save space but keep the realism, and you have now a different look of a layout than the first base plate over here, but you still get 6 buildings on a plate. In this first layout, you can have 6 buildings as well if you use the 8x8 footprint for all the buildings. I chose to use bigger buildings on this side just to demonstrate the variety that you can achieve. But on this base plate, you can create a cluster of 6 buildings. It really looks different and gives variety to your Lego city. Remember, I talked about variety and density, and this definitely illustrates it. In terms of expanded layout, if you're using multiple base plates, imagine if you have 4 base plates on a long shelf. You can then create the middle 2 sections to be these layouts, and then you can have the end base plates to be this layout, but mirror images. And then you got a nice I-shape layout for a city block. In fact, it's a full street, and that can be pretty cool. If you want a grid, like a square grid, you could still have 2 of each, and basically you have 2 of these base plates with this layout next to each other, and you would have 1 more parallel to this. So you have 2 roads with an intersecting T-junction across. So that's pretty cool as well. And you can imagine if you've got even more space than that, you can just add base plates with similar configurations. So these layouts gives you a scalable and expandable system to build your Lego city, even though you have a little space. So whether you have a long space or more squarish space, this particular layout and setup can accommodate to fit your needs. I hope this inspires you further to create your own mini Lego city, even if you have no space. Even if you have space for a Lego city or you have a large Lego city, I'm sure you've got a section of town which is pretty small and you do not know what to do with it. You can create a small township just like that, because it's really realistic to have an old section of town with really small houses, even if you have a modern metropolitan city. Remember, variety and density. So even if you have a huge sprawling Lego city, I do think a section of your city would benefit by having a cluster of these very densely packed small buildings. Let me know what you think about this expanded layout, and if you are going to build your own mini brick city. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel and turn on that notification bell. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.